Hi, in this educational video, we're going to talk about an accident rider or accident policy. So, a lot of the feedback that we hear from clients and prospective clients when it comes to a Medicare Advantage is their trepidation about co-pays that are directly associated with the Medicare Advantage. Now, here at Tyrone Carr Associates, what we always try to do is try to think outside the box and create value by offering different ideas and ways that you can structure policies to help one, mitigate that risk, but also try to mitigate a lot of costs that's directly associated with a Medigap policy. Now, a Medigap policy, Medicare Advantage, now they all have their place. They all have tremendous value. But again, it's really learning about the individual and finding a policy that best fits their needs. So, but in this video, we're going to talk about accident rider and how we can integrate that into a Medicare Advantage to mitigate some of that out-of-pocket co-pay risk. Now, statistically, one of the main reasons people end up in the urgent care, emergency room, or hospital, majority of the time is due to an accident. So how can we mitigate that risk when it comes to a Medicare Advantage? So when you look at a Medicare Advantage policy, they have co-pays for primary care office visits, specialist visits that could be an endocrinologist, a urologist, a cardiologist. It could be a visit to the urgent care, the emergency room, or it could be a scheduled inpatient visit or outpatient facility. Now, all of those services come with a cost, a copay. So, and those copays vary depending on the service. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about how an accident rider can mitigate that specific risk. So let's just say you have a project that you're working on at home. You're building something, or you're in the kitchen, you're making a meal, and you cut your finger, you need stitches, or maybe you're out on a bike ride, go to the handlebars. I've done it many times, mountain biking, or it could be maybe you're playing a sport and you tear ligaments, you roll an ankle, you break a bone, anything could happen. So what you can do is we'll look at, let's say your Medicare Advantage has a max out of pocket. So let's say your max out of pocket is $6,000. So what this means is that every single time that you have a service rendered, whether it be a visit to the urgent care, emergency room, hospitalization, or it could be a scheduled office visit, whether it be a primary care or a specialist, you pay a copay specifically for that service. So every time you pay a copay, that copay gets applied towards or against your max out of pocket of $6,000 in this example. So once you've reached this max out of pocket, anything after that services rendered are covered 100%. So where the accident rider comes into play is, one, the way that we'll structure it is we'll make this accident rider equal to your max out of pocket of $6,000. So we'll take that max accident rider and we'll make it equal to your max out of pocket of $6,000. So in the unfortunate event that you end up in the urgent care, emergency room, or hospital, what we'll do is when you receive that bill, we'll apply it towards that rider. So as long as it's classified as an accident, and I can use myself as an example as well as my daughter, this rider then mitigates or covers this max out of pocket. So what happens is that in the event that something unfortunate happens, an accident, we've mitigated this risk by just layering it with this other policy. And people say, well, why would you go to the trouble of adding an accident rider when you could do a Medigap policy? Well, an accident rider for $6,000, someone who's turning 65, you're roughly $31 on a per monthly basis. What's nice about this rider is the premium is fixed at the time in which you purchase it. So if you're 65 years old and you have an accident rider of $6,000, 5 years down the road, it's still going to be $31. Now, I don't present anything to a client or prospective client if this isn't something that I invest in. So I actually have an accident rider on myself and my family. One, because we're extremely active as a family. We ski, we snowboard, we mountain bike. we lift weights, our kids play travel soccer. So our exposure to an accident is pretty significant. So I want to make certain that I'm mitigating my risk. And so to add this rider is more cost effective than to have a lower deductible when my premiums are 10 times higher than what I would pay here. In addition to that, my insurance policy has rate increases every single year as I age. This policy doesn't. So it's a more effective way of mitigating this risk in the event of an accident. I'll use an example. My daughter, who's now 12, she was 7 at the time. She was playing at school in the playground, and the base of the playground is mulch. So she's pushing two of her classmates on a tire swing. And so as she's pushing, she slips, right? Mulch, it shifts, right? So as she slips and she falls down, she pushes the tire swing away with two of her classmates. Rather than trying to get out of the way of the tire swing or ducking and protecting her face, she tries to immediately get back up. It comes back, hits her square in the nose, breaks it, and her nose was parallel to her face. So we obviously were contacted by the school. We took our daughter to the emergency room. She ended up having to have surgery to correct the nose, the break. So between the emergency room visit, the operating cost, the anesthesiologist, and the actual surgeon, her coming out of the anesthesia took longer than the actual procedure it did itself, but it was like $4,100. So when I received that bill, I submitted it to the provider that handles our accident rider. Within 24 hours, I had a check deposited into our bank account to cover 100% of that emergency room visit. So again, it's a great way of mitigating that risk versus paying higher premiums for a Medigap, or if you're concerned about copays. Again, it's a way of mitigating that risk without paying higher premiums. So if you have any questions, give us a call. Thanks for watching.